What's up, everybody? This is Free Association on the Sportsnet podcast network. I'm JD Bunkis, joined by insider extraordinaire, guy with the best outfit at the holiday party, Donnovan Bennett. What's up, man?
Not much.
That you went with your classic, like, I smoke a pipe near the fire with a book outfit for the holiday party yesterday.
I went with what I was wearing on Tim and Sid immediately before got there.
And that's that. It's a good outfit. I think it looks good on you. But you look like really sophisticated and mature. Like you are the man with leather-bound books when you wear that burgundy outfit, turtleneck. Like very mature, very understated and mature, my friend.
The problem is that this is an audio medium.
Let's see, there's a camera there. There's a camera there. There's a camera there.
None of which are showing the outfit with which you're speaking.
I know.
So it's still, in that sense, is an audio medium. So no one knows what you're talking about.
Do you think your fans follow you from show to show? Like, there's a lot of people listening to this that know you're on Tim and Sid, so they watch Tim and Sid that day.
No, not at all. I don't think I have fans. It's not Bill's Mafia.
Please.
Like, I think people are Sportsnet fans.
I would like to name off the top of my head.
You think you have fans?
Yes.
You think there's a JD Nation out there?
I don't think it's as big as the Bennett band, but I do think that there's like a few associates that follow me show to show, yes. I love them for it. They're the ones who tweet me all the time, and they forgive me for all my grammatical errors and bad takes. They're the ones I cherish the most.
I hate to break it to you, but we're all replaceable.
I didn't say that wasn't the case.
We are. No, but there are people in our business who have fans who aren't replaceable, hence why they aren't replaced. Elliot Friedman has fans. Elliot Friedman has followers, many.
Yeah.
If Elliot Friedman
I didn't say I have as many fans.
left Sportsnet, he would take people with him on both sides of the border. When Elliot Friedman tweets out 31 thoughts, thousands of people immediately consume. That to me, that's what having fans means.
So not even
I shouldn't say this in front of a live
I have a mom.
microphone,
My mom is a huge fan of mine.
But if that's not fans.
Yes,
that's family.
Yeah.
So it's a different F word. If one of us was hit by a bus tomorrow,
God forbid,
and we couldn't go on the various Sportsnet platforms, the ratings would not change. The share price would not change of the stock. Literally nothing would change.
So, first of all, I take that as an insult, sir.
You can take it however you want. You should take it as facts.
The ratings, nothing would change. Here's why maybe you are replaceable is because you've gaslit yourself into believing that you have no value. Like, what are your negotiations like with the bosses? They're like, Donnovan, we need to do a new deal. You're like, who, with me? What could I be even worth? $1? Like, I'll do it for $1, I guess. Please just keep me around. I'm replaceable. If I got hit by a bus, who would care? Who would miss me? Jeez, man. So bleak.
No. Disagree. The value is the sweat equity that I bring. The value is how hard I work and what I work on.
Okay.
But it's not as if I have this intellectual property that no one else in the world has.
I mean, as we're going to discuss on the show later, only one person's they're breaking news on national television, no big deal. Kind of the Elliot Friedman of the NBA.
It's not broken news. It's sprained news. My point was that it's not even news.
I've never had sprained news before.
Okay.
I'd like to have some sprained news. Anyways, we'll talk about that later on in the show. But I did want to, this has gotten me into a bit of trouble before. And this, to some, might sound like a laziness, but really it's not. It's not laziness, it's stupidity. I couldn't help thinking over the last few days, as I'm watching Pascal Siakam play against the Utah Jazz and play so brilliantly, and just, again, like the offensive attack is just so developed. And it's when he sees that he's got Bogdanovich on him, he's like, oh, I'm going to back this guy down. I'm going to score around the rim. Even with Rudy Gobert around the basket, doesn't matter. I'm going to pull up for a three. I'm going to knock down 33 points in that ball game. No sweat. Fred VanVleet, same thing. Just another effortless performance for him where it's hilarious looking back and thinking that last year there were these rumors about the Raptors signing Mike Conley, when in actuality the Raptors have now 2 point guards I would rather have than Mike Conley. Like, that's the dead last thing that the Raptors would need.
Conley's pretty good.
He's pretty good, but you're not trading him for Fred or Kyle.
You're not trading him for Fred.
Okay. I don't think you're better off with Mike Conley. Either way of that you look at it, I'm so impressed by these two guys. They've really steadied the ship in the absence of Lowry. And I know Ibaka just came back and Lowry's on the precipice, but this team really has felt like it's been steadied by a draft that happened in 2016, one of which the guy didn't even get drafted in, Fred VanVleet. Pascal Siakam gets taken 27th overall in that draft. In a year where, ironically, everyone was so disappointed because the Raptors owned the Knicks pick that season, which ended up being 9th overall, which was kind of a disappointment because people thought that that pick would be a lot higher. They take Pirtle. He was the prize of the draft for the Raptors. He was the guy that they were looking at. There were questions about why you take him when you already have Jonas Valanciunas. And Siakam is a guy who gets thrown into the mix and who's this understated guy who's viewed as an energy player. And now he's the franchise's best player. Like, he's the Raptors' best player. And Fred VanVleet, you could argue, is their third best player. A guy who went undrafted. It's one of the better draft coups in, modern NBA history. Getting those two guys in those slots, I think you're hard-pressed to find anything better. But here is my half-baked idea of the day. If you redrafted that draft class, would Pascal Siakam go 1? And would Fred VanVleet go in the top 10? Because I think that there's a very strong case that Siakam would be the first overall pick of his draft if it was done again today, and Fred VanVleet would be the 9th overall pick of that said draft class. And if you're picking at 27 and getting an undrafted free agent, and you turn them into the 1st and 9th picks of a draft, I think we're talking about one of the best off seasons from a scouting and development standpoint in the history of the game.
It's funny. So I remember us having the conversations around that draft in terms of who they might get, who they would want. And I at 9 really wanted Sabonis.
Yeah.
And Sabonis and Pirtle were always compared against each other because they played in the same conference. They played against each other all the time. They played against each other in the tournament. And although Sabonis was the better player for the better parts of that year, Pirtle had a better tournament, thus he was drafted higher. And so when I think of that draft, I actually look back and say to myself, well, no, what if with the other 2 picks? Well, what if they drafted Sabonis instead of Pirtle? Now, that's like a butterfly effect of 1,000 different things that
I know,
may
that's
happen,
the problem.
including, well, maybe you don't end up trading for Kawhi Leonard when Pirtle was in that deal.
Or maybe you have to include Siakam in the trade instead of Sabonis.
Or maybe you have to include OG Anunoby in the trade instead of Sabonis. Another thing that I would not do. It's tough to fully look at the draft and redraft it now because these guys are still really young. They're still unfinished products. And if we had this conversation a year and a half ago, would we be saying Fred is top 10 in this draft? Probably not.
No.
So
that's why the exercise is today.
Right, but Brandon Ingram could totally take off and change this conversation. You don't believe this could be the case, but Ben Simmons could. Jaylen Brown could eventually get his own team and go to another level.
But don't you think it would be an incredible accomplishment for any of those guys if they ever achieved the heights of what Siakam is now? Like, Jaylen Brown is
an incredible accomplishment?
First of all, Brandon Ingram doesn't have the physical gifts to ever be Pascal Siakam. Like, he's never going to be as fast. He's never going to be able as strong. He's never going to be able to defend the positions that Pascal Siakam.
Well, you can't say he's never going to be as strong.
Can he lift a broom handle?
But are you going to put him in handcuffs and never let him go into a weight room?
No, because if you put him in handcuffs, he would just slip right through because he's got skinny wrists. He's so tiny.
Right, but Tracy McGrady was never going to be as strong until he was as strong and led the league in scoring.
Okay, then let's just put it this way. Don't you think that it would be... to me right now, Pascal Siakam is a top 10 player in the NBA. Like, that's just kind of... And yes, things could change, things could evolve, and things can... Over the course of the season, we might look back on that and say, oh, the people got a little too excited from a sample that ended up being small. But night in, night out, watching a ton of games, looking around the league, looking around just like who's doing what for what teams, I don't think that there's 10 better guys than Pascal Siakam are playing right now. And I look at his age.
10 better guys in the league?
Yeah. I don't think there's 10
guys.
guys.
I think there's 10 better basketball players in the league. I'm not sure you're wrong, but that's quite the statement. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
So LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Luka, Steph Curry.
Well, sorry, this season in terms of guys who are playing right now.
James Harden. My guy, he scored 60 points.
Listen,
in three
one
quarters.
of those two guys has a ring, and one of those two guys, listen, if I want someone to win MVP,
okay, Charles Barkley doesn't have a ring. Is Siakam right now better than Charles Barkley was?
I'm just saying, if I want someone to win MVP of the regular season, then I would choose James Harden. If I want someone to be the face of my franchise for the next 5 years, I don't know. I think maybe there's a case for Siakam. I'm just saying. That's how I feel about it. It's just my opinion.
I think we found the headline for this podcast.
Siakam over Harden and get Ratio to get on Twitter from Rockets Twitter. No, I'm just saying that he's playing unbelievably well this year.
Embiid?
Yeah, I mean, Siakam stays healthy and actually works out and doesn't score 0 points ever. When's the last time Siakam scored 0 points in a game? In a meaningful game with 12 shots?
Probably a couple times in his first season.
Yeah, I mean, maybe in his first season. That's the thing. Okay, let me bring it around to this. So these are the guys that you'd be picking from today. If we redraft 2016, I put Siakam 1. Simmons, Brown, Ingram, Sabonis, Hield, Murray, Brogdon. Then it gets to Fred VanVleet, DeJounte Murray, or Karis LeVert. Those are the best guys from that draft. I don't think that there's even a case for anyone else to be in the conversation. If you did it again today, would you take Pascal Siakam? If the 76ers called the Toronto Raptors and said, hey, what would you do? Would you like to swap here? Would you like Ben Simmons? What would you say? Because for me, I'd say no.
Simmons for Siakam?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's the number one player in that draft.
I think you have Brogdon a little too high.
I have Brogdon too high?
Yeah.
At 8?
Yeah.
Over Fred?
Yeah.
So you'd switch Fred and Brogdon?
Yeah. I might even take Murray over Brogdon, to be honest.
Well, yeah, I have Murray ahead of Brogdon.
No. The other
DeJounte Murray?
Yes.
No, come on.
Yes.
Brogdon looks amazing. That Pacers team has been carried because of Brogdon. He was the second best player for the Bucks in that playoff series against the Raptors. I would say that my greatest joy as someone who cares about the Raptors actually winning another championship was that the Sixers let go of Jimmy Butler, who was the scariest guy in the Sixers series to me. Then they get let go of J.J. Redick, who was basically the second scariest guy in the Sixers series to me. And then the Bucks got rid of their second best player in Malcolm Brogdon for nothing but money.
Right. But what's Brogdon's ceiling? How many All-Star games could Brogdon go? Best case scenario.
Well, is Fred VanVleet going to be an All-Star someday?
I think Murray might.
Yeah, Murray. Oh, but I have Murray again ahead of Brogdon.
No, the other Murray.
DeJounte.
I think it's possible.
Yeah, we should do. Let's just call Jamal Murray and DeJounte Murray for the point of clarification. I like DeJounte Murray. He was actually the guy I was really disappointed the Raptors didn't take instead of Siakam. Turned out to be wrong on that one, as I usually am. But I still like Fred ahead of DeJounte based on what we've seen. Like, we've seen him be one of the best players in the finals.
I just think best case, DeJounte Murray could end up being a Tony Parker. Best case. But what's his floor? His floor is probably what De'Aaron Fox is right now. It's pretty good.
Brogdon won Rookie of the Year for this class.
Well, it was also like one of the worst Rookie of the Year. People at the time said it was a terrible choice.
Take out development paths. Take out however it would have started if they would have been a Raptor from the beginning. Just as of today, these guys all get put in a pool. All these guys get put in a draft lottery, and you get to pick from these guys. Are you taking Siakam 1, yes or no? Age still counts, but where they are in their development and who they are and what they've shown this year.
It's a conversation. It's between him and the other Murray, the Canadian one. Yeah,
I just did the for those that can't see this thing who are listening to the podcast, I just did the meme of the shocked guy face. The Canadian Murray over Pascal Siakam.
It's a conversation. It depends what I need. But I would take him over Simmons. I would take him over Ingram. I would take him over Jaylen Brown. But I mean, I really liked Murray at the time, and I still do.
I mean, Siakam is the bigger player who is a faster player who can defend multiple positions, who's scoring better than Jamal Murray is this season, and who now is shooting a 3-pointer as a 6'9" player that's right around 37%. It's tough for me to come around to the case for Jamal Murray here.
I mean, he's all of 22, and he's giving you a 17 PER.
Yeah,
like he's young and good already.
Mm-hmm. He's 3 years younger. That's huge.
He played an entire NBA season with a hernia, and still put up numbers.
I'm in the camp of I don't really see what others see with Jamal Murray, and it's the same
buckets?
with Jokic. No, I don't believe in the Nuggets like other people do. Like, I look at the Nuggets and I think they're a perfectly fine team who are going to rack up regular season wins. I just think Jokic has never gotten in shape to this point in his career. I doubt whether or not he's going to be able to do it in the future. And Jamal Murray to me is someone who still struggles defensively. And as a shot creator, I just don't see him as an elite shot creator. I see him as a very good shot creator.
That's fair. That's fair. Nothing you said is incorrect.
So to me, that's the draft, is that Fred VanVleet's number 9 in this thing. I'm taking him just slightly behind all of those guys. But just what an incredible accomplishment this is. And that leads me to the next question, which is that if Fred VanVleet is the 9th overall pick in a redraft full of those kind of caliber players, where does he rank amongst the greatest undrafted free agents of all time? Because I think Ben Wallace is still 1. Bruce Bowen is still 2. But
Terrence Davis is 3.
I mean, Terrence Davis is going to get in that conversation. It's not a long list of guys. But now you're in the talks of, is Fred VanVleet, would it be disappointing if Fred VanVleet had a career that was the same as Avery Johnson, who also had 1 ring, who averaged, I think, at the best at his very peak? Avery Johnson was a 13-point-a-game player. Different player, couldn't really shoot a 3. Fred can, but the times are very different. Avery Johnson was very much known for controlling the floor, being a floor general type of player. Not really stylistically, there's some clashes with Fred. But I feel like I would be disappointed if we look back on Fred VanVleet's career and it was that long and he never had better statistical seasons.
Yeah, and we were obviously making the distinction of American-born players, like players who have come through the draft. Because, I mean, there's a bunch of guys who never were drafted that came from Europe and had great NBA careers.
Jose Calderon was one.
I think Jose Calderon is one. I think that as of now, and you mentioned the list not being long, that, yeah, certainly he is. But I do think he will have competition moving forward because the league has changed. Before, if you weren't drafted, it was a wrap. CBA, go over to Europe. Now with the G League and with two-way contracts, there is a mechanism similar to football where undrafted guys basically have their choice of where they want to start their football careers, and it's actually better to be undrafted than to be a late-round draft pick. There is actually a benefit in having a guy that is undrafted that you can develop, that you can put some time into, and maybe he's not the finished product where you're spending a draft pick on him, but eventually he could get there. The point is, and we've already seen it with Terrence Davis, I think there are going to be more Fred VanVleets in the future just because I think that's the way the league is going.
Well, I think that more guys, too, are going to look at what Terrence Davis did and what Fred did and say, okay, I got drafted this late. Like, I don't want that two-way deal. Like, I don't want to be spending the year down in the G League. I'm going to tell teams I don't want to be there, and I'm going to evaluate my options after a couple of Summer League games. Like, I'm going to go out, try to tear up the Summer League, and see if someone will take a flyer on me, and whether or not they'll give me that one-way contract or that good contract that, you know, Terrence Davis has, which I think is just under $1 million, which is wild to think that. Again, speaking of Masai Ujiri's accomplishments, for a team that was capped out this year, Masai Ujiri got Rondae Hollis-Jefferson for $1.5 million, or is it 2.5? It's 1.5 or 2.5, and Terrence Davis for less than $1 million. It's like, guys, there's a reason why you keep reading about the Knicks trying to get Masai Ujiri, everyone. So let me run down this list then, because this was my compilation of guys that you could argue were better picks than Pascal Siakam since Giannis Antetokounmpo. Like, I don't think anyone would make the case that Giannis at 15 is not the hallmark or the benchmark of the latest pick. So he was in 2013. So after that, Rudy Gobert at 27 in 13. And I'm taking, I'll slice up the pie this way. It's got to be 70% player, 30% where you took the player. Like, that matters in terms of, like, you get penalized for taking a guy first overall, like, say, Karl Anthony Towns in 2015, where it was really obvious that he was the guy to take. Like, the Kentucky blue chip prospect, you had the first overall pick. That's not a lot of, that takes away 30% of the credit to your franchise. Rudy Gobert, 27 and 13. Better or worse pick than Siakam at 27th overall in 16. Defensive player of the year, basically lock him in every single season.
Slightly worse.
Agree. So Siakam, better pick, better player. You wouldn't trade Siakam for Rudy Gobert. You wouldn't even consider it. Jokic, 41 in 14.
Better pick.
But that's because of the 30% that you're adding on top, or because you'd rather have the player?
I mean, I personally wouldn't rather have the player, but I mean, we're talking about how many players would you trade for Siakam. Jokic would be in that conversation.
He would be in the conversation.
He's an MVP caliber guy. I mean, you're down on all things Nuggets, but both.
Actually, not all things. I love Will Barton.
Okay, all right. I would not trade him for Siakam.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
Certainly where he was picked, but just the player alone, I think you can make that conversation. Because the other thing too is Siakam has had a outstanding 10 months.
Mm-hmm.
Rudy Gobert has been good really good for the last 2.5 years. Jokic has been good for the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. And so there is some value in having the player who's been an impact player for a longer period of time.
I don't like when people do this. I actually find it to be a bit of a pet peeve, the MVP discussion when we're only in a couple of months into the season. But I think if you voted for MVP right now, my vote would be Siakam fourth. I'd have some order of LeBron James, Luka Doncic, Anthony Davis, and then Pascal Siakam. Like that would on James Harden. Like that would be my group of players that I would be putting Siakam in this season. I'm not saying he's necessarily as good as those players, but
have you heard of this Greek guy? His name is Giannis.
And Giannis. Sorry, that was the omission that I meant to have in there. But yes, those guys would be the conversation of like what the MVP race looks like right now. Siakam's on the outside of that group, but I still think I've never seen Rudy Gobert ever for any stretch of time get in that conversation of would you be in an MVP race with that type of caliber of player?
But that's because he doesn't score the basketball. But he is in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation every year. Uh-huh. He is on the all-defense team virtually every year. Mm-hmm. And he is the anchor for what is a top 5 defense every year. So that stuff matters.
Put up 30 on him and was like, thanks for coming out. Game's over in the end of the first quarter. Thank you for coming. Sunday in Toronto. Game over, everybody. I just think that the drop-off between Gobert's defense to Pascal's is not even close to the drop-off between Siakam's offense to Rudy Gobert's offense. Like, I think that those two skill sets are non-comparable, whereas you could at least talk about their defense. Jokic, same thing. Like, I think the pick is better for the Raptors just simply because if you ask me, would I rather have Siakam, I'd say yes. And dropping it down, like, from 27 to 41, I still think hitting on 27 and getting a guy who's that good is still better than hitting on at 41. It's the closest one to me on the list. The next one is Devin Booker, who I know you're a big fan of. 13. He was taken 13th overall in 2015. Better pick.
Siakam.
Yep. Karl Anthony Towns, 1 in 15.
Siakam.
Ben Simmons, we already went over. Donovan Mitchell. This is one I thought a little bit about. 13th in 17. 13th is deep in the draft to get a guy of Donovan Mitchell's caliber.
I think Mitchell's a better pick. I mean, again, is he the better player right now?
He has to be if you're going to make that the better pick, I think.
No,
or
he doesn't,
youth.
Because he was an impact scorer immediately as a rookie. They lost their franchise player in Gordon Hayward, and they didn't miss a beat. And they went to the playoffs.
He's gotten better year over year, too.
But the fact that he was that good that early, he has a head start. They're running a race on a curve, and he has the inside lane. And so for that sole reason, I think Mitchell's the better pick.
By the way, I also want to establish something that I didn't do in this game because, again, this game was poorly thought out. I'm not saying would you rather for the Raptors this season for a championship run either. Like I'm saying if you're taking a team right now from scratch and what you think is the better pick just overall in general. Jason Tatum, 3 in 17.
No.
Luka Doncic, 3 in 18.
I actually honestly think even though 3 is extremely high.
Yeah.
I actually think that there's a case to be made.
That's the best pick.
Luka is a generational player, and if you want to say Phoenix got a bigs are hard to come by. He's a local guy. The Arizona ties, they needed to sell some seats. Sure, I'll listen to that. And okay, you didn't draft Michael Jordan, but you got Hakeem Olajuwon. Tough. Like, I get it.
I mean, if you got Hakeem Olajuwon, you got a guy who's suspended for steroids.
Sure, he's not suspended for the rest of his life. Yeah. But that's the methodology at the time, right? Okay, fine. Number 2 is where it's really inexcusable, and that would be your favorite franchise.
I mean, I look at this entire draft and I think it's ridiculous. Like, Luka Doncic should have been so obviously number one, and it's painful to look back on it. Like, imagine thinking that you would rather have, I mean, like, Luka really technically is 4, right? Because they drafted him and they traded him, so he's technically 4. But yes, the Sacramento Kings taking Bagley 2, and then Trae Young going 3 for essentially, you got Cam Reddish and Trae Young for Luka Doncic. And it's like, imagine picking up the phone tomorrow and trying to get the Atlanta Hawks to agree to that deal. Like, no, the Hawks are saying, please do this trade with us, and Dallas is laughing them off the phone. Like, of course not. Of course they're not doing that. And dude, Trae Young's a good player. This isn't kicking dirt on Trae Young. And Cam Reddish, I think, could still be a good player, a serviceable player. Like, he's way too young in his career to evaluate properly. But I think the ceiling for Luka Doncic is that, like, he could be the best player in the NBA for 10 years. Like, or he could be the second best player next to Giannis. Like, it's some variation of that. Maybe he's the third best if Zion achieves his heights. But, like, he's going to be in the MVP conversation year over year over year once this, like, this chapter turns to the new era of NBA players.
I actually am not mad at the Hawks for making that deal, even now. And their thought was this. And the Cam Reddish pick is separate. It was for a first-round pick. They didn't know where it was. They didn't know who it was going to be. They may have messed up that first-round pick, which makes the deal in hindsight look bad. But the known entity at the time was Trae Young and a future pick. And so if you're telling me Trae Young and a future pick for Luka, I'm not mad at it. And
Luka, you won EuroLeague MVP.
Certainly did. Trae Young had one of the best NCAA seasons that we've ever seen.
He got bounced by the University of Rhode Island.
That's true. He's also He's also if there was a second tier to MVP favorites, Trae Young would be in the conversation. It's just he can't be an MVP because his team is too bad. But
I mean, I think that kind of counts as if your basketball team, when the league where the best player matters the most, if they win games, should count against whether or not you're
but
MVP.
Steph Curry's team was really, really bad, and all of a sudden they were good, and Steph Curry won an MVP. The point is, Trae Young might end up being third-team All-NBA. Like, he's not terrible. He's really, really good. The calculation that the Hawks were making is, could we essentially trade on someone who could be the European LeBron, but in exchange, we get a new era Steph Curry, and we put beside him what we hope is a new era Klay Thompson.
And they blew it.
Well, Reddish is not Klay Thompson.
I know, and Trae Young is not Steph Curry.
But at the time when they were making the deal, they did not know that Cam Reddish was going to be theirs or that he wouldn't end up being Klay Thompson. And we're also like 2 months into Cam Reddish's career.
I know, but I'm not evaluating. That's what I'm saying. It's too early to evaluate, and it's unfair to do it.
I'm not mad at the Hawks. Yeah. We will still find out whether or not that was good, bad, or indifferent. The Kings have no excuse.
Yeah, the Kings one is horrible. My only thing about the Kings one is just It's so I think that the Suns one. I think all 3 picks are bad. Like I do. I think that Luka Doncic being EuroLeague MVP, every scout saying, "Look at how great this guy is," and them saying, "Well, can he play defense?" It's like, yeah, better than Trae Young, better than Marvin Bagley. So put him in the league. I think that franchises screw up when they try to emulate or copy other franchises and just try to have this version is going to be our Steph Curry. It's like Steph Curry's a once-in-a-generation shooter. Like, you're never going to see another Steph Curry. Like, probably not anyways. He's the best shooter of all time, and to me, it's not close. Trying to say that you're finding your own Steph Curry, I think, is kind of a fool's errand. You just have to, in the NBA, you have to take the best player available, the best prospect available, and to me, Luka Doncic was that guy. We got to take a quick break because we're already 30 minutes into the podcast. But Kyle Lowry's coming back. And speaking of undrafted guys, Terrence Davis has been brilliant. So what happens to Terrence Davis? And, I mean, really, should it matter? I think we should be talking about that. But first, just always a reminder, Sportsnet newsletter. I know we've been telling you about it, but subscribe to it. It's a great newsletter. It's got everything from around the NBA. Well, we've told you about it for weeks. You go to sportsnet.ca/newsletters, and you get a weekly thing. It's our NBA editor, Steve Long. It's great stuff. Kyle Lowry's coming back. I think the Raptors, it's going to be really interesting to see how this all meshes and operates because Fred has played so well as the primary point guard, and to me, it's clear that it's become Pascal Siakam's team. But I think Kyle Lowry, one thing he's proven throughout his career is that he's flexible and he's, what's the word here? He is malleable. He will be whatever you need him to be on any given night. If you need him to step in and be the assist maker, he'll do that. You need him to be the guy who takes the charge, he'll do that. You need him to take a big three, he'll do that too. He'll get to the basket, he'll score, he'll do all those things. I think he's also an intelligent enough player to be watching what they've been doing and understand like how he's going to best fit into this and do some trial and error. So I'm not worried about like Lowry derailing things. I'm more curious about like how the team can get better. But the one guy you circle and say, well, your role is in question a little bit is going to be Terrence Davis. This kind of sounds harsh, but Terrence Davis is obviously not as good as Kyle Lowry, but he's been incredible, and sometimes he's been their energy guy off the bench. But do Terrence Davis minutes matter if you think the Raptors can win a championship this season?
No, they don't. I mean, I think you want to. I get the genesis of the question. You want to continue to develop Terrence Davis because...
And he also deserves to play. He's been great.
But that was my second point, is that he deserves to play, in that before Kyle Lowry went down due to injury, before Serge Ibaka went down due to injury, before OG Anunoby was poked in the eye, Terrence Davis was playing. Now, was he playing 20 minutes? No. But he was playing 10. Mm-hmm. He was playing more than Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, than Chris Boucher, than any of the bench pieces that got a bunch of run after Ibaka and Lowry went down. So I think it will revert back to the mean, and Terrence Davis is going to play around 10 minutes of the night. It's going to creep up to 15 or so, because I do expect that this team, now that some real tough stretches in their schedule have been taken care of. The month of December is pretty tough, but then the schedule lightens up a little bit. I do think that they're going to be blowing some teams out, and I do think Terrence Davis is going to be jacking up some heat check threes in fourth quarters. What I also think happens is that Patrick McCaw is going to be hanging out with Miller at the end of the bench. It's going to be Eminem at the end of the bench, and they're going to be getting their threes up and celebrating when guys hit shots, and they're going to be hoping that 10-point lead is stretched to 15 or 20 so that they can stretch their legs and get some run, because everything that they were trying to develop McCaw into being able to do to help the team bring the ball up, get us into our offense, play some good defense, and give some opposing point guards some length. Terrence Davis can do those things, and you can do them for a lot cheaper. And the shot looks better. And so I think that the trickle-down effect doesn't even really impact Davis that much. It actually impacts McCaw, who's not even playing right now anyway.
I think that's a good point, because when they did come into the season, that was one of the conversations was, it's a 7-man rotation. It's a tight bench. But when McCaw comes back, they're going to give him some burn at backup point guard. I think that's kind of over now. I actually do think that they have to give Terrence Davis minutes. Like I think he's good enough where they need to kind of keep riding this, because he's valuable enough to them that he should be playing every night. And you're right, maybe it's not going to be 20 minutes. I think it's going to be a little flexible. Like Nick Nurse does that, right? He plays the hot hand. And I think you're going to have some nights where Nurse loves to do this, where if the team is a little bit behind or in their tight contested game, to start the fourth quarter, when he has some of those bench pieces in before he brings in the horses to finish a game, if those guys stay hot, like against Los Angeles, for example, against the Lakers, he'll leave those guys in a little longer. And I think that those are going to be the types of ways that Terrence Davis finds a few more minutes for himself throughout the course of the season. But to me, I'm kind of viewing Norm Powell and Terrence Davis as some variation of that's your sixth man. Like, Serge Ibaka is clearly their first guy off the bench. He is their sixth man. But that Davis and Norm are going to be like, who's hot tonight? Get some minutes. Whoever's playing better gets to have more minutes. Norm's, I think, leash will be a little bit longer, but that you basically have two guys that are going to combine into one, which is like an energy player who plays defense, who gets stops, who gets into passing lanes, who shoots threes, and who takes care of some of the offense when it starts to stick a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he was only playing 8 players.
Yeah.
The 5 starters, Serge Ibaka, Norm Powell, and Terrence Davis.
Mm-hmm. And then McCaw cutting out Davis.
Yeah, but McCaw really didn't have enough of a healthy run for us to almost really describe where in the rotation he fit and really how much trust Nick Nurse had in him. But when Nick Nurse made his statement about Stanley and Rondé kind of getting with the program, I mean, maybe he was just giving Terrence Davis minutes to belabor the point. Look who I'm playing over you.
If that's what happened, wow, how well did that work out?
Well, I mean, it's just he's not someone who was from the culture, the championship culture, the defensive culture that predated this season that he was referencing. Mm-hmm. He, like them, was totally new, not just to the team, but to the NBA. So it's not as if OG Anunoby and Norm Powell and Patrick McCaw, when he was available to play, were playing these minutes over these guys. Oh, I've been to wars with these guys, figuratively speaking. I trust them, and you have to earn my trust. He was playing a guy who he had seen play basketball for a month. So, again, it could have been to make it very obvious that it's not me just currying favor to the guys who also have a ring. Mm-hmm. It's me evaluating the team. But bottom line is he played 8 dudes. Terrence Davis was one of them. So now that 2 of those big guys are coming back in Ibaka, who's back, and Lowry, who will be back soon, I don't think Terrence Davis is gonna lose those minutes. Because if Nick Nurse saw enough in the preseason and the first week and a half of the season to play him over those guys, he damn sure has seen enough now. Mm-hmm. After that Western road trip, there was no removing Terrence Davis from this rotation, no matter what happened.
Yeah, I think you're right. And he's not going to suffer the same fate as Chris Boucher, is what I'd say. Like, it's pretty clear that Rondé Hollis-Jefferson has established himself as essentially the backup forward, and them going small ball. Like, he's going to play for OG and he's going to play for Pascal. And then you have your 2 centers. And Boucher might get a few minutes in spot duty, depending on the matchup or foul trouble or blowouts per night. But really, he's kind of out of the rotation.
Yeah, it's tough. Sorry to cut. It's tough for Boucher because what he provides is similar to what Serge provides.
Yeah, just
stylistically they do it differently, but ultimately they're doing the same things: rolling to the rim, blocking shots at the rim, providing some spacing, hitting some corner threes, and actually Boucher has taken some above the break threes as well. Mm-hmm. Rondé provides something totally different that really no one else on the roster provides. Maybe if you played OG Anunoby up in a spot, he would, but his hustle, his ability to crash the boards and get second and third offensive opportunities, there's nobody on this team that really provides that.
Yeah, that's why I think the rotation goes Mark, Serge, Hustleman Chap, which is still a nickname I don't understand. Maybe you do. OG, Siakam, Fred, Kyle, Norm, and now it's a 9-man rotation with Terrence Davis. Like, I just don't see how you phase him out of the rotation completely, even though Nurse is someone that historically has been 8-man rotation, like tighter, a little bit tighter of a bench, using guys sporadically in other spots. Yeah, I don't know how Matt Thomas plays ever again, other than when they need a 3 at the end of a game. I don't know how you're right, Pat McCaw plays again. There's a couple of these guys that are just like, you really are going to be mop-up duty, not playing very often, night in, night out.
Yeah, Terrence Davis in the month of November set a career high in scoring 4 times.
Yeah.
He needs to continue to play because you're not sure what the ceiling of the player is unless he gets a dedicated run. This is the very reason why I was a proponent for
bench mob 2.
A bench mob 2, because then it's taken care of. You may only play 5, you may only play 10, but you're going to play at these exact same times. And if there are some injuries in the future, maybe Marc Gasol, who's older, goes down. Maybe Kyle has another bumper bruise, or we just want to give Kyle some scheduled rest. It's not like we have to take you out of your wrapping because you haven't played for a month and a half. You've been a part of the systems. You've been a part of competitive action. And now we're ramping you from 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 and not going 0 to 60 in terms of asking you to play meaningful basketball.
I just think the one good thing about Nick Nurse, or not the one good thing, I mean, he's coach of the month for a reason, but one of his strong suits is that and I think I talked about this during the playoff when he was struggling against the Sixers a little bit, is that he was struggling to find that control over the team and that right mix of things. To me now, one of the strengths of Nick Nurse is that he has this great handle on the rotation and the pieces and who's going when and who fits when, and his experimentations, the old mad scientists, they're working out. I think he'll find minutes for Terrence Davis. One more break. Quick tell me about NBA chat room, and then we'll talk DeRozan and Donovan NBA Insider.
NBA Chat Room is our live interactive show on YouTube every Wednesday at 7. Myself, Faisal Khamisa, Daniel Michaud contributes as well, the First Lady of Sportsnet Digital. And basically, we just have a conversation with you, the viewer. Whatever you want to talk about, we talk about. We've got our things that are on our mind. Pour one out when we, I guess, pour a little sip out for our fallen homie who has been dunked on or embarrassed themselves on the court that week. But mostly, it's not just the Raptors chat, although that leads things. We want to know what conversation you guys want to have, and we're the conduit for you to have it. So it's the community. Join us, NBA Chat Room, every Wednesdays at 7.
So this dropped about, a couple of days ago?
What?
This DeRozan thing. I want to start with that quickly.
Sure, yeah.
Because I don't think there's much to be said here, but I think it merits just having a quick discussion on. It's Frank Urbina, I think I'm saying that right, of Hoops Hype. He had an article out where he polled a bunch of different executives around the league asking where DeMar DeRozan could land. It was in the wake of a rumor that was the Orlando Magic were interested in his services because the Orlando Magic, as we all know, are desperate to try and recreate the old Toronto Raptors team from 2015, 2016. So the quote from a Western Conference executive was this: "It sounds crazy, but Toronto actually makes a lot of sense as a landing spot for DeRozan. As far as what Toronto is giving up, it would probably have to be a first-round pick, plus Serge Ibaka or Marc Gasol." I don't even really want to entertain the asking price because I think that's pretty. I think that just kind of shows you that if I was a Western Conference GM, I'd be going around and asking my front office who gave that quote because I got to fire that guy because he's obviously paying zero attention to the NBA. There's no way the Raptors would trade one of those two bigs to acquire DeMar DeRozan, especially to throw in a first-round pick when, we started this podcast talking about how Masai Ujiri is capable of having some of the best draft classes in NBA history. But let's just do it in a vacuum. Raptors fans, I don't know if other fan bases do this. They have this fascination of bringing back old Raptors. Forever and ever and ever, it was let Vince retire with the Raptors, bring back Vince, have Vince, go out on his shield as a Toronto Raptor. I never liked that. I never thought that was a good idea. It was what's he going to really do for you? If you watch Vince on the Hawks, he's not a very useful player. He's the worst defensive player now in the NBA. Can't stay in front of anybody. And that's fair because he's, 42? Is Vince 42 or 41? Either way, he's in his 40s. Incredible, incredible accomplishment. DeMar DeRozan has now become that guy that I think Raptors fans are going to point to and say, bring back DeMar year over year. And this is I'm going to switch it to my PSA. I don't think DeMar DeRozan makes sense for this team anymore. There is a world where you could turn him into a bench scorer and he comes in and he provides you with minutes. But we just talked about how you need to give Terrence Davis minutes. Do you want to lop off Terrence Davis' development to have DeMar DeRozan back here? Do I think DeMar DeRozan is a better player than Norm Powell? Of course. But if the Raptors were offered DeMar DeRozan tomorrow, I would say no for a couple of reasons. One is that his history with the team is tied too close. He and Kyle being two veterans on this team, it would completely change the dynamic of the group. There's no need to look back because the Raptors are a better team now than they've been since the other year DeMar DeRozan wasn't here, which was last season. So I don't think there's a need to look back on the past. I don't see how DeMar DeRozan would fit with this team. I don't see how you could get him to play the role that you would actually need him to play. Do you agree or disagree?
It's fair to say DeMar DeRozan's having a down year. Why he's in trade talks?
Again, I'm a big believer in your best player dictates. Your best two players or your best player should bear a lot of responsibility if your franchise stinks, and the Spurs are dreadful, and it's DeRozan and Aldridge. So, I don't know how you divvy up the pie there, but a lot of it goes on DeRozan.
Here's DeMar's numbers this year in a down year. 21.6 points, 5.4 rebounds, 4.5 assists, shooting 52.6 from the floor, 20.4 win share. It's pretty good in a down year on a team where he doesn't have a lot of help. In a tough conference. Listen, if we were just saying, forget the logos, forget the roster, forget the history. You have player X, DeMar DeRozan. We're going to trade him to the Toronto Towers, who have this makeup of a roster.
But that's not what we're saying.
Would they be interested? Why?
Because
what's the difference?
Because history does matter for him.
Can the player make the team better and increase their chances to win a championship, or
does Fred go to the bench?
Maybe not.
So you're going to ask Fred VanVleet to go to the bench in a contract year so DeMar DeRozan comes in. Like, again, I know we're dealing with so many. You did the butterfly effect thing from earlier, and this is kind of that. I don't see how you could ask DeMar DeRozan to start on the bench for his old franchise. And then if he does come off the bench.
Well, I mean, you could ask him to. What is he going to do? He's going to take Fred VanVleet hostage and say,
it's a tough look.
If he plays over me, that's it. I'm going to send you a ransom note. Andre Iguodala to win a ring went to the bench. Manu Ginobili, the best years of his career, came off the bench. So he could go to the bench. My point is, guys who shoot 50% from the floor and score over 20 points in a down year do not walk on trees. Do I think they need to trade for DeMar DeRozan? No. Do I think I would never ever even entertain it because there's history? Like he's an ex that I broke up with last week? No,
that's not only why.
I think you'd have to do your due diligence. And if another team with the exact same roster in a similar situation would make the trade, but you're not going to make the trade just because there's bad feelings on how things used to be, I think it wouldn't. I think that wouldn't be wise. Some of the guys that are being mentioned are the centers, Gasol and Ibaka, who again are on expiring deals. So they're going to be in trade conversations regardless. Plus, we just talked about Chris Boucher, trying to give him more minutes. That would be a pathway to play for Chris Boucher. And if it's potentially someone like Norm Powell, who's we can have an argument of how
contract doesn't match up though for Norm.
True, but it wouldn't just be Norm. But I'm saying people still feel, even though he scored 33 points, that if we're looking at favorable contracts for the Raptors, Norm Powell's would not be one of them. And so if you're getting off of the Norm Powell money and again, opening up some room to play for others, maybe Terrence Davis, sure. I would not say no way, no chance just because he used to play here.
But I'm not saying just because he used to play here. I'm saying that factors into the decision. I don't think DeMar DeRozan. I think there's an avenue where.
But why does it factor into the decision? Because if we were talking about hockey players,
yeah.
It's
such a different sport.
But the culture would be like, we're actually more incentivized to do it because it's a hockey player. So why is it different if it's because
why
of
would
basketball?
you be more incentivized if it was a hockey player?
Just because it's like, oh, we can bring our guy back. Like the culture of the sport would be welcoming to, oh yeah, let's bring him back in the sweater that we saw him playing for so long. But in basketball, for whatever reason, it's like, oh no, we can't go back there.
Well, the thing is, like in hockey, is like I don't really know the example of, like, yeah, fans all get sentimental about bringing back their old players, right? Like
if Marc Bergevin is dismissed as the GM of the Habs today, and their new GM says, well, we need some offensive playmaking defensemen, and PK was available, there are a bunch of Habs fans be like, yeah, let's do it.
I mean, he is available. Well, you seen his year? That's not good.
But the point is, the culture of the sport is not, oh, he used to be here, it didn't work out, he's gone forever and ever, amen. The way it is in this situation, and I'm just saying, just evaluate the player, forget about the history.
And I just think that, okay, that's a fair point. Like, I hear you on it. I just think that for DeRozan to be too big of an ass
Oilers
to be
fans are not saying, there's no way we're taking Taylor Hall back again.
I think that they actually would. Like, again, these guys that you keep mentioning are like the dudes who are the most available, and they're like, yeah, we're going to pass. We're going to pass on. I don't know, the two big guys.
I don't know how this became tape to tape.
I know it did.
But you don't think
the ghost of Rory Boylan and oh my God, Ryan Dixon.
If the Oil in a year were there a legit shot to win the cup, who cares what happens with Taylor Hall in free agency, right? He's going to secure the bag. If you don't think, if they brought him back to Edmonton, the city of champions, that gave them a little bit more scoring punch so that the burden is not on two guys who are having now historic seasons. You don't think Oilers fans would be excited about that?
I'll just say yes so that we move on. I'll just say yes. I almost got his Oilers hat on. We should be asking him. I think, yeah, they'd be excited to have him back, but I don't know if that would end up being the most prudent move depending on what it would take.
The point is, DeMar DeRozan is the Taylor Hall of the NBA.
Yeah, except for, again, in the NBA, it's like only one guy can shoot the basketball, and one guy's going to play, 30-plus minutes a night if you're DeMar DeRozan? Like, I've never seen DeMar DeRozan in a relegated role before. I think that's a huge assumption to make, that the guys all of a sudden you're just going to step in here and just be willing off the bench and that he and Kyle and the politics of the situation would not be awkward, and that welcoming DeMar DeRozan back as the guy who's fighting for minutes with Terrence Davis would be a very odd thing.
Kyle's his best friend. If anyone could make it work, it'd be him. And
no, I'm saying it's a problem for the other guys.
DeMar DeRozan's 30 years old.
Yeah.
Like, this is the point of your career where you start to make sacrifice and think of legacy.
I'd like to remind everyone that DeMar DeRozan was benched in the most meaningful game of his career
by a coach who's no longer the head coach.
I know. I don't want to spit on DeMar here, but I don't think DeMar DeRozan is a guy you win championships with. Let's just say that.
Okay. People didn't think Dirk was until he won one.
I mean, yeah, if I can take the 7-foot all-time best scorer, best European player ever versus a guy who scores 20, I know DeMar DeRozan can score. I don't know if he can do really much else. And I think that this Raptors' new identity around defense and youth and overlooked players, that just, it doesn't include DeMar. Last thing. You dropped something on Tim and Sid filling in the other day that kind of hurt, because I was like, you have this news, you think you'd save it for your show. You think you'd, text me and say, hey, buddy, I got this piece of information I'm sitting on. When we were discussing basketball players coming representing Canada, the camera pans to you as Sid Cicero is discussing Andrew Wiggins.
The camera didn't pan to me.
It panned to you. It was a close-up.
The camera doesn't even pan in that studio. There's 3 cameras,
and it panned over, and it went zoomed in. And as Sid Cicero is doing a rant on Andrew Wiggins, Donnovan Bennett says something akin to, I mean, he told me he's going to be there. As in, Andrew Wiggins has told Donnovan Bennett, #insider, #basketball Elliot Friedman, #watch your corner Michael Grange. Michael Grange saw that report and was like, excuse me? Maybe get off my corner a little bit? Did he send you a text later being like, maybe let's communicate who gets to break the news? Andrew Wiggins has told you that he's going to be playing for Canada this summer. And you couched it with he could change his mind, but this was communicated to you. Personal friend of Andrew Wiggins.
This is why it's not breaking news. This is why you shouldn't feel any type of way about me not telling you, because I did tell you. I told you at the time. I told you last year.
What?
No. Is this new?
Run it back.
Is this new? I've said it. I said it on Tim and Sid. I'm sure we had the conversation, and I said it on this show, because when Andrew Wiggins was being crushed for being ahead of the story that he wasn't playing last summer,
and I crushed him, and I still stand by the crushes.
That's fair. Yeah. I disagreed at the time, and I said this is why. He's not going to play this summer. He wants to concentrate on his game, earn his contract, and when the Olympics are around, he will play. I said that last summer. Mm-hmm. Everyone crushed him and him alone for saying early, guess what? I'm not going to be there. So
his thing was weird, though, because it was like, are you in or are you out? Remember that? It was the weird story, how it was disseminated. It was leaked that he was going to be there. It was
reported that he was playing. He never said he was playing.
Yeah.
It was reported that he was playing. Then some local reporters asked the Timberwolves if he was given permission to play. Mm-hmm. They said no. So then it was like, well, is he playing? And then when someone asked him, he said he wasn't playing, mm-hmm. and which is what I did. I asked him, and he said he wasn't playing. But he said he was going to play in the Olympics and that he was always going to play in the Olympics. Then on the eve of training camp, when everyone else was at the Gold Ring Center playing in the OVO tournament and not playing for Team Canada, slowly, a bunch of Canadians realized that there was a tournament, but a bunch of Canadians realized that not only was Andrew Wiggins not playing, virtually nobody was playing. And so Andrew Wiggins took all of the arrows early when everyone else on the low did not play late.
I shot arrows at everyone, just to be fair.
Sure. But
I spread it out. I was like, remember Legolas in the movies? What was that movie called? Lord of the Rings? I was like, I don't. I was shooting all the arrows. I was all over it.
But you understand that when Rowan Barrett does his circuit of media, the question is always, is Andrew Wiggins playing? People don't say, well, is Trey Lyles playing?
Yeah.
Is Dylan Brooks playing?
I mean, Trey Lyles lived in Canada for 3 minutes, and then he moved to the States.
Okay. What Nick Stauskas? No, people don't ask.
Yeah, you know why? None of those guys were the first overall pick in the NBA draft. That's why. No one's called Maple Jordan. Like Trey Lyles does Trey Lyles have a nickname? Like, I don't know. I'll give you $100. Anybody in this room who tells me Trey Lyles' nickname. Like, that's not happening. Like,
so because someone when he was in high school wrote on Wikipedia his nickname's Maple Jordan. Andrew Wiggins needs to play every summer?
I'm just saying that, dude. Parents, like the pedigree, the guy had been on record throughout his entire life saying that he wanted to be an Olympian and that was a dream that he wanted to pursue. And you're right, people can pursue that in different avenues. And have I maybe even been too critical? I'm willing to accept that. I'm willing to say that Andrew Wiggins still has time to change his narrative. But no, man, Andrew Wiggins was the hope of a country. They put all of his games on national television when he was a Kansas Jayhawk. He's a little bit different.
Keyword is they.
Yeah.
Like he didn't do that.
Oh,
right, so that's.
I mean, you're his best friend, so you're going to defend him no matter what.
The only point I'm making is that nothing has changed.
Yeah,
nothing changed the last summer when he said the whole time, "I never committed to this."
When did he communicate this to you, though? Like just recently? Like when did you follow up on this question? Because this is super fascinating, man, dude. I think right now the way Andrew Wiggins is playing, if he goes, he's the best player for Team Canada.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
Like it's him or Jamal Murray. Like it's like one of those two guys. The way they're going, like. RJ could get there someday, but he's never played as well as Andrew Wiggins is playing this very moment. Like, it's pretty big news if Andrew Wiggins goes to that tournament, man. Like, that's a pretty big game changer when you're just projecting even forward to if they make the Olympics that he would be there. So, like...
Yeah, but the point was he always said he was going to be there. He just said he wasn't going to do the stuff in between. And so that...
Wait, so you're saying if they get to Olympics, he'll be there?
Well... I see what you're saying. Is he going to be there for the qualifying of the Olympics?
That's not what you meant?
No, I meant he was going to play this summer.
So
this summer, this Olympic summer. Now again, this is going to get aggregated.
Bro, text him now.
I'm speaking for Andrew Wiggins.
Let's get him on the phone.
He did not. Well, at the time, we didn't necessarily know what the qualifying situation was going to be, but he is still all in for the Olympics. So, but again, that could change.
That's like, see, all in for the Olympics to me is very different. It's like, yeah, if we get there, like if we get to the championship, like he's gonna Terrell Owens it in the Super Bowl. Like he's like, all right, now I'm ready to go. Like it's like, And I know T.O. that was actually a real thing. I'm just saying that's the analogy I can think of is a guy who gets to the dance and then shows up. I hope Andrew Wiggins is there, man. I don't want to hate on Andrew Wiggins. I just think that we've talked to guys like. Talked to Carl English yesterday on Good Show, and we were discussing his new book, which is out. And one of the things we naturally talked about Team Canada, and he mentioned that a lot of sacrifice goes into it for guys, and that he's left big money on the table that he's lost through Team Canada, and that everyone should be cognizant of that. And like I am, and I think that if you are someone like Chris Boucher, and I know Chris wanted to go, he had the personal issue, but I'm just saying if you are a fringe NBA player and you feel like if you go play for Team Canada, it's going to hurt your chances of making NBA money, you got to do you, man. And I've always kind of thought that what opportunity do guys get where they get to play basketball just for the love of the game and for the love of their country anymore? And like the sacrifice, I think would be worth it. I think that if those guys do it, they will not regret the decision.
So your sentiment is, hey, listen, it's a personal decision. Everyone has their own factors and pressures, and if you need to not play, to concentrate on your NBA career in order of making money to fortify yourself, I get it. So then on the flip side, why can't you have that exact same stance retroactively? Why can't when someone says, I need to take care of my personal game to make sure that I earn the money that I've been given?
I don't see how playing basketball in meaningful games hurts your development. I don't see it. I've never seen that connection of like Andrew Wiggins goes and he's the best player on Team Canada and he's got the ball in his hands. He's playing for NBA championship coach head Nick Nurse. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh man, this is really hurting my development, getting 20 shots a night.
It's not even development. Yeah. It's rest, one.
Yep. He's had a lot of rest. It's like no playoffs. He's rested.
It's tailoring your season so that you are ramping up when the season starts, not when the qualifiers start. And it's being able to specify, okay, I'm going to do skill development at this part.
Bro, I understand it. I just don't agree with it. Like I understand that side of things. Like everyone's got to take after themselves and do what they think is best. But I can also be critical of the decisions you make. I don't have to agree with them. And that's just how I perceive it. Is like, do I understand the thought process behind it? Of course I do. I think that guys have shorted a little bit what it means to play for the national program or what it can mean for their careers and so forth and so on. And I do think that, when you are making money as one of the faces of Canadian basketball, it'd be nice to see you give back to the place and help grow the sport that has made you a millionaire and has made you super successful. That's all.
Landry Shamet said no to Team USA.
And he was rightfully barbecued by Bill Simmons, the biggest voice in all of basketball. Nailed him for it. Right between the eyes. And then Landry Shamet has to look over at Clippers games and see Bill Simmons sitting there. But I'm assuming is in courtside seats reminding him all the time about how he didn't go play for USA basketball.
I just think the last summer was not about individual players. It was a systemic issue. When you have that many players, basically, unless you were a Celtic, you weren't interested.
Yeah. And Celtics are good this year.
And that's why?
I mean, probably didn't hurt. Like, I'm just saying
they weren't good. They weren't good in
guys,
the summer.
I'm just saying guys sure appear to be living up to their contracts in Boston. Like, didn't really seem to hurt any of these guys. Kemba Walker looked great. Jason Tatum's taken a step. Jaylen Brown, everybody that went has been better. We got to wrap this up. Thank you for spending your time with me, and make sure you check your phone because, like, the inside scoop, I didn't know you were this connected. I didn't know. I knew you were connected. Like, I know guys know you and guys like you, but Wiggins giving you that scoop. It's a big scoop.
It's not a scoop. It's old news.
I mean, it's old news for you. You knew it for a long time, and you were respectful, and you didn't say. Anyways, anything else?
No.
All right. Thanks for listening. Subscribe, review, do all those nice things. Share the pod, do all those things. Thanks for listening. Free association, sportsnet.ca.